Now, let's talk about analysis. As you remember, in the cycle that describes successful software development, the first part, the first third, is analysis. That's what the box is showing, and all it is expressing the problem domain so that it is entirely true. It is precise, it is comprehensive. The knowledge comes from the subject matter experts, comes from the stakeholders, whoever knows about the information we need to be aware of regarding the business model. Remember, the business model implements the business vision. Now, analysis. How do we perform analysis? This is our box. There are challenges, but there are solutions. So let's talk about challenges. And I think we've heard them all. We've heard people tell us our problem domain is so vast, nobody can comprehend it. Your mind will not be able to understand. We've heard our software was written 20 years ago. Stay away from it. It's going to bite you. We've heard it is so complex, you simply cannot program our problem domain. It's too complex. We've heard also there are just too many business rules to make this work. I had in front of me a whole team of Java developers telling us they were going to give up on their employer, a large insurance company, because they just couldn't write so much code. There was just too many business policies. That was the first time I heard that. I said, how come you can't write this down? I understood later. I've also heard, yes, our system is really bad. It takes this whole team to maintain the system, but that's okay. As long as they need that, they will keep us and we'll have a job. Okay, analysis. Really, we know there are challenges. Let's focus on the steps to success. Interestingly enough, again, it's only 3. The first one, know all the problem domain concepts and topics. For instance, customer, bank account, deposit, transaction in general. Just know all your concepts or topics or things. Second, identify all their relationships. Obviously, if you have the concept of customer and you have the concept of bank account, what are you missing? The relationship between the two, which is John Smith owns that checking account. Thirdly, understand which level of abstraction each of those concepts belong to. This is a little bit more interesting. But those are the 3 steps, and you could be wondering, why do I need to focus on the concept relationships, and the abstraction for one very simple yet powerful reason, which is our mind, the way we think. The way we think is things, concepts, and then their relationships, and finally, lastly but not the least, abstraction. If we can handle things, the concepts, their relationships, and the abstractions, nothing can stop us. We have not seen a single problem domain that could not be analyzed successfully as long as we would use those 3 aspects. So what is the strategy? The strategy is, first of all, you're going to map your concepts and your concept relationships in a 2-dimensional reality. Why 2-dimensional? Because we said concepts and concepts relationships. I'll give you a quick example, which of course we will study together when we do the analysis class. Examples we have here: position, then on the left-hand side you have a job type, and then you have skills, company, and the work agreement. You see the work agreement that is putting together the relationship between the human resource and the position. So you have your concepts and your concept relationships. You will see later in class that the concepts are those boxes, And the lines in between are the relationships, and this is it. This already takes care of two of those three aspects, concept and concept relationships. There are different symbols and different ways. You have your dash line here, and you have some arrow tips and all that. Just a few syntactical details that once we know them will allow us to really, and that is important, simply translate what is in our mind into this diagram. And having this diagram that we can see, then we'll be using that very powerful part of our brain that is used to processing images. So now we can think as clearly and broadly and precisely as our brain is able to very precisely process all the visual information. Imagine when you're driving around, how much information you have to be aware of, and that's what we'll be doing. So this is the first secret, I almost would like to say, that transforms thinking in our mind into a picture. Picture is worth 1,000 words, and if you use the proper syntax, and this is a language, then you get something very precise, very useful. The third dimension is mapping the abstraction, and I'll give you an example. Can you see those numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4? So those are 4 layers of abstraction. And I'll give you an example, very simple. Think about a legal entity. A legal entity, we know what that is. Well, we have to admit, this is kind of abstract, right? Well, a legal entity could be an individual for all of you who work as freelancers, or a corporation, your employer. And notice that the individual and the corporation, both of them are legal entities, but which layer between layer number 1 and layer number 2 do you think is more abstract? Obvious legal entity, the bottom layer is more abstract, the number 2 layer is more concrete. Next, we said corporation. What about a service company? A service company is a corporation. A corporation is a legal entity. But if you look at this from service company down to corporation, down to legal entity, you are going towards higher abstraction. One more step. A service company could be a financial service company, an auto maintenance company, a legal service company. Now you have something much more concrete on that layer number 4. You can see here an example of analyzing concepts under the angle of abstraction. And we use those 3 things. And again, because this is the way we think. So we have seen how we handle concepts, we have seen how we handle concept relationships, and finally we've seen how we handle abstraction. So this is very smart of all of us to build something that resonates with the way our mind thinks. And that's where the power is. That's where you get your analysis power. Meaning that nothing is going to stop you. Whatever problem, no matter how complicated it is, no matter how broad it might be, you will always be able to break it down into concept relationships, and their abstractions. So how do we do it? Well, we have 5 main artifacts. This is the methodology. The business synopsis is a simple text that condenses everything about your subject matter. The business vocabulary is a very interesting, extremely simple to build, but also very useful artifact. It defines all the key terms that are being used in your subject matter, that are being used in your business synopsis. So far, all that is just text, specialized, small text. Business functions. Oh, that's an interesting part. This is taking the viewpoint of the user that is going to approach the application to do what? What are the main things the user wants to accomplish? That's what the business functions are about. Business processes is the 4th one. This is in the case where in whatever business or in some manufacturing system, you have to go through steps physically. A person is going to do this, the next person is going to do that. A company or an organization is going to go through a series of steps in order to fulfill some requirements. Example, someone walks in the bank and says, I want a checking account, first step of your business process. Then you go through a few steps, and at the end, here it is, sir, here is your checking account. That's the end of the process. Finally, but very importantly, the business concept model. And the business concept model is what we talked about previous slide, where we describe concept relationships and their abstractions in a diagram. I showed you two diagrams, but in fact, we put all those together. Abstraction, concept relationships are on the same chart. And that is what we call the business concept model. Some of you may be familiar with this. I have recognized UML class diagrams, but that's a technical term for the language that is being used itself. Really, it makes sense to us when those are business concepts or are engineering concepts or are medical concepts or insurance concepts and their models. Now, there are analysis situations, and I call them mysteries and drama. So we have this very powerful tool. It never fails, yet we have found very interesting situations, and this is what I would like us to talk about during our next session.